Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very good evening. I'm just checking. We've got to 54 shares. Okay, I'm sorry to have to do that for you, but I am not doing this on my own anymore. And what I found disappointing is that some of you didn't know what a share button was, which means you've not been sharing my posts. So that's all I've got to say to that. Sunday, the 8th of January 2023. This is, first of all, an announcement to Facebook, first of all, that I am broadcasting from the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is a democracy. And in a democracy, we are allowed to question those who govern over us. We are allowed to hold them to account. And it is neither defamatory nor unlawful in any way to question the decisions of public officials, politicians, and the stories that are written in the mainstream media. A loophole has been used to remove, I think, 20 of my videos from YouTube for complaints of defamation. Not a single one of those complaints of defamation will result in any form of defamatory action, because there is nothing defamatory in telling the truth. There never has been, and there never will be. So what I've done today, is put this out on YouTube on the belief that when senior officials, police officers, council officers, politicians, public officials with their fancy titles contact Facebook, put this out on Facebook, when Facebook get contacted, that they understand that we are operating in a democracy. It is as simple as that. It is not complicated. And so should Greater Manchester Police want to arrest me again, and remember they've already been forced to apologise for arresting me, and one of their cases, at least one of their cases against me, has collapsed in court. Well, I'm sorry. Greater Manchester Police should have the courage to contact me, and I will march to the police station. Operation Hexagon, as I've maintained from the outset, is an unlawful police operation. It is an unlawful Greater Manchester Police operation in partnership with Oldham Council, designed to snoop to monitor the social media posts of everyone who questions Oldham Council and raises concerns over the grooming and gang rape of the town's children is unlawful. In a democracy, monitoring people for daring question child abuse is unlawful. My last transmission, when it was pulled, included references to a serving Tameside councillor, Liam Billington, who was threatened by a senior police officer, instructed to attend the police station where he would be interviewed under caution, and a democratically elected official, all he had done was raise questions and concerns over the council supplied figures of child sex exploitation in Tameside, exercising his duty as a corporate parent. A senior police officer, one of Andy Burnham, Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham's police officers, contacted him and essentially told him he had to go to the police station or else. So this I have described as tyranny. I am a historian by training, and I have spent many years of my life working in places in this world where tyranny reigns. I am very, very familiar with what tyranny is, and Oldham is a tyranny run by despots. This is not a democracy, and one day there will be a reckoning. One day there will be a reckoning. Whether it happens this year, I do not know, but one day there will be a reckoning. A very good evening to all. I've heard that I have double booked myself with Prince. Is he Prince Harry? Is he still a prince? I can't keep up. It's not really my area of expertise, so my apologies if I have taken you away from what looks like to me a soap opera being played out. Okay. I made reference to, and you'd see me put it up, the title Enemies of the People. And you can see from what I shared, I had a quote out of a book. It's an 19th century book, Scandinavian bloke. The most dangerous enemy of the truth and freedom amongst us is a compact majority. And I put that quote up with a picture of Deputy Leader of Oldham Council, Abdul Jabbar, the ex-councillor Bilder Malik, and a whole host of what I refer to as the OBA cartel. And they're all waving I'm voting Labour banners. Yeah, you've all seen that. So what we are dealing with is nothing new. A compact majority means essentially that fewer people take an active interest, and minority interest groups can control and hold power, which is essentially what has happened in Oldham over the last 2 decades. And that minority interest group are the Pakistanis and Bangladeshis in partnership with a fake liberal metropolitan elite. and white Labour Party politicians who have sold out the majority working class communities, including people like myself and progressive ethnic minorities, sold us all out, sold out the white working class and sold out Asian men and women like me. And because we've opted out of voting, exercising our democratic right, the only way in which we can genuinely hold these people to account, as we've demonstrated, well, we've took out Sean Fielding, we've took out Arud Shah, we've took out Hannah Roberts. The only way is through exercising our democratic franchise. We don't, because we've been led to believe that there's no point in voting, and the information has been presented to us in such a complicated way, we don't even understand the democratic process. And finally, sadly, we don't have people we can vote for. The absence of courage amongst those who want to be politicians. Those of you who've been following me for some time will know that whilst I, through this platform, have shaped the political narrative in our town for the last 4 years, very few, if any, of the politicians will openly engage, post, like, share. It's because they're cowards. It's because they just want to not just use me, but use all of you. And that is why also people don't vote, because they don't have people who inspire them to want to vote for. It's one bunch of scumbags after another who want to use you and abuse you. And that is why we've ended up with what is described as a compact majority. People have lost faith, people have lost hope, and people look around at those who want to replace one lot with another lot and do not in any way feel that they are really any different than what has come before. Exactly, Julie Hayward. I'm just seeing Julie Hayward's put a post up. No trust. And in that absence of trust, where a smaller group and a smaller group become more and more powerful, tyranny reigns. What I want to do today, this evening, is go through the list of individuals and organisations who I believe to be enemies of the people. Enemies of our town. There is nothing defamatory in what I say, criticising politicians and public bodies. Once again, this is a democracy. You will see I'm intentionally not in any way swearing, and nor was anything I share here either untrue or anything other than my opinion based upon facts that are in the public domain. The first enemy of our people is the former council leader and now Shadow Minister, Keir Starmer's Shadow Minister for Sewage, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon. Now, I will explain to you very, very succinctly why I consider him to be an enemy of the people. James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon MP covered up the grooming and gang rape of working class white girls in Oldham. He knew that children were being groomed and gang raped, dragged into shisha bars where they were drugged, raped and then trafficked across the country. What he did, instead of making a public announcement in a council meeting, instead of instructing his various council departments to raise the alarm so that parents and those of us who worked with children knew what was going on and could immediately take safeguards, instead of telling schools to tell parents so they could warn their children and better safeguard, what he did was he helped cover it up, and his officers, proven through Andy Burnham's Oldham CSE review, actively engaged to suppress news stories from being published, and also not one of them, or one of the agencies, or one of the departments in the council raised any alarm bells. And instead, after the Rotherham report came out, so not instigated by anything in Oldham, after the Rotherham report came out, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon wrote on an obscure blog, the risks, online blog, Oldham Council, the risks of grooming gangs. And even then he was vague. If I was the leader of Oldham Council at the time, I would have stood up in the council chamber and raised the alarm bell that our children were being dragged off the streets in broad daylight and raped by Pakistani rape gangs, because that is what Burnham's Assurance Review has confirmed. And this is not a lie, this is not defamatory, these are facts. These are facts. Now, they tried to spin the report to cover up for James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon MP. But these are the facts. He knew, furthermore, when the Home Affairs Select Committee wrote to Oldham Council, where he was the leader, his council and the Home Affairs Select Committee would have written to him, because that's what politicians do. They write to politicians. They refused to cooperate with the Home Affairs Select Committee, who was investigating the repeated rape of the child Sophie, who is now in that report. And he is furthermore an enemy of our people, not because of his interest in postal votes and obsession, prioritization of the Muslim community where he nibbles his samosas, rather than the other communities in this town. He is furthermore an enemy to our people, because following the report published by Andy Burnham's team, his first action was to write attacking, abusing members of the public and hold an adjournment discussion debate in Parliament that he and Debbie Abrahams attended, where he named me as a far-right activist and the people of this town as racists. And all we had done was refuse to remain silent to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon MP should be arrested for his role in this cover-up, in these crimes against our children. And if the Labour Party had any decency or compassion for our children, they would suspend him, investigate, and then throw him out. At the next meeting, at that meeting in Parliament, next to James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon, was our second enemy to the people, and that is our second MP for the town, Debbie Abrahams. I mock her, and in a democracy, mocking of politicians is allowed. It's something we've done forever in this country. Debbie Kashmir, I mock her as, and that's because of how she prioritizes Kashmir and the rights and the civil action and the campaign for Kashmir independence. She has more interest in that, in my opinion, than she has in children who were groomed and gang raped in our town. My first interaction indirectly with Debbie Abrahams was after the last general election, where Greater Manchester Police contacted me following Debbie Abrahams taking a dossier to them, wanting to have me arrested. Greater Manchester Police made very, very clear to me, Detective Sergeant Andy Day, who looks after the elections, made it very clear to me that if I did not attend Oldham Police Station voluntarily, then they would come and arrest me. When I attended Oldham Police Station with a lawyer, he put in front of me a series of screen grabs that had been provided to him by Debbie Abrahams of things I'd said online. Debbie Abrahams MP, I proved to Detective Sergeant Andy Day, sat in Oldham Police Station, where he kindly gave me a cup of tea. I proved that Debbie Abrahams, MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth, had doctored evidence, falsified evidence in an attempt to have me maliciously prosecuted. Enemy to the people. Debbie Abrahams is globally famous for being kicked out of India on her route to Pakistan or Kashmir or the Indian occupied Kashmir, and they caught her. And what then emerged is Debbie Abrahams, enemy to our people, is on the payroll of the Pakistani government. This is a matter of fact. I'm not making anything up. She's been forced to declare it. She is on the payroll of the Pakistani government. And to this day, Debbie Abrahams has had nothing to say about the grooming and gang rape of children from the gates of Count Hill School. Why? Could it possibly be because she only survived as an MP because of the bloc Muslim vote that saw her over the line delivered to her in Glodick, St Mary's Ward, Alexander Ward, by the Pakistanis? I'm asking a question. That is Debbie Abrahams, enemy to the people, number 2. The third enemy to the people has got to be the Labour Party councillors, and specifically the 3 council leaders who all blocked attempts for a public inquiry into the grooming and gang rape of children. These are our town's children. And remarkably, the Labour Party en masse on each occasion voted to block requesting the government come in and conduct a public inquiry into the cover-up. There's no ambiguity here. There's no dispute with what I'm saying. Sean Fielding, the leader of Oldham Council, first of all, stood up and claimed they were barefaced lies. Not only did he claim they were barefaced lies, he then identified members of the public online who asked questions, contacted their employers, and using his official position as leader of Oldham Council, attempted to have decent, honest members of the public sacked from their jobs. A Freedom of Information request confirms this took place, and when complaints were made to the Council's Standards Committee, which is bent, it was fudged in such a way where Sean Fielding was never held to account. Worse, Sean Fielding was reported to the police by multiple victims for harassment, malicious communication, and the police covered it up. Greater Manchester Police actively covered it up. Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, at the time, members of the public were reporting Sean Fielding to the police for malicious communication and harassment. At no point was he ever interviewed by Greater Manchester Police. Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, who has oversight of the police at the time, gave Sean Fielding's girlfriend a job she had no experience or qualifications in. No lies here. Matter of fact, enemy to the people, the council leaders and the Labour Party politicians. Sean Fielding, we ousted. We ousted at the ballot box. He claims I'm a racist. He claims I'm a racist. I am a decorated anti-racist with over 20 years of service to this country, including fighting extremists. Enter Arooj Shah, the next council leader. Before becoming council leader, Arooj Shah had posted love hearts in response to the offer of my murder by one of her Pakistani mobsters. Greater Manchester Police refused to arrest her or arrest the guy who offered to kill someone. The police officer who refused, his name is Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine. Before becoming leader of Oldham Council, we exposed Arooj Shah's dodgy declarations, backdated resignations of a mocktail bar that it later transpires a convicted heroin dealer has somehow got some links to. This convicted heroin dealer was also Dale Cregan's getaway driver. That's the cop killer, Dale Cregan's getaway driver. And she brazenly hangs off his arm, and to this day she is seen in his company. Almost immediately after becoming leader of Oldham Council, two things happened. Arooj Shah, with Debbie Abrahams, attended a public rally, spoke at a public rally in Oldham. Majority of Muslim protesters had gathered there, objecting to the Jewish-owned factory Elbit that had been subject to a series of anti-Semitic attacks. They drove that business out. One of the few skilled industries delivering a Ministry of Defence contract, these people drove that business out of the town. And no one else is going to come into this town like that based upon the political support of these protesters. In the crowd were children waving Hamas banners, calling for the eradication of Israel. I wrote an article. That's right, wrote an article and published it online, objecting to democratically elected politicians, in particular the Labour Party, and their support for anti-Semitism, which is now being proven. Detective Sergeant Christopher Dean hammered down my door with 8 police officers and arrested me for objecting to anti-Semitism. When interviewed, he refused to say who the complainant was or even what specifically I had done, apart from use the term Kristallnacht. I had likened the smashing of windows of the Jewish-owned factory as having more than just an antisocial behaviour sort of reference, and it being anti-Semitic because of the way it was done. Red paint was also daubed, and that's also anti-Semitic. And being a student of history with an honours degree in history, I had an understanding of what was taking place. These were anti-Semitic attacks, no different to if rashers of bacon had been put through the letterbox of a mosque. And I would have called that out as well. The police tried to charge me for a racially aggravated public order offence. They claimed I was the racist. 9 months later, the case collapses in court. Arooj Shah's witness statement was a joke, made very little, if any, reference to the actual content of what I wrote about. Furthermore, not long after being elected, Arooj Shah's car was firebombed, blown to smithereens. There was attempts by JIM McMAHON MP, her mentor, in the national news, the Daily Mail, where he tried to incriminate me as responsible for the blowing up of a car, of the council leader's car. Old friends of mine from Glodick smuggled out CCTV video footage that shows that this blown up car was not parked outside her house, as she claimed, but parked on another street. It shows that the doors were unlocked and the 2 clowns that came to blow it up smashed the window after they've already opened the door to make it look like the car had been broken into. A year later, best part of a year later, Greater Manchester Police are still refusing to issue a statement confirming what happened, who they've charged. You know why? You know why. Enemy of our people. After we defeated Arooj Shah, just before we defeated Arooj Shah, in her last council meeting as leader, she stood up and was forced to admit to the grooming gangs operating in Oldham, and went further to acknowledge that children were at risk and being groomed and gang raped to this very day in Oldham. Remarkably, despite admitting that, she then voted down a motion, led her Labour Party colleagues in voting down a motion calling for the investigation, for the government to come in and investigate. The second council leader, Labour council leader, voting down a motion. And she couldn't have done this without the support of all of them, including the likes of that Leanne Munro, who's a Durker and Sholver councillor, and I pick on her on purpose, young, white, female, representing a community where children were groomed and gang raped from, voted down a motion calling for a public inquiry. Because all a public inquiry would have done is held those who'd failed our children to account and made sure that those who groomed and gang raped our children were pursued through the courts. Why is a young woman Labour politician such as Leanne Munro refusing to support the government coming in? She's far too young to have anything to do with it. Same with Amanda Chaddington, who's now the leader. Far too young. Why? Once we ousted Arood Shah in predictable fashion, Amanda Chaddington, sorry, Debbie Abrahams stood up in Parliament and called us racists, campaigning to remove a council leader who hangs off the arm of a convicted heroin dealer and parties with a man convicted for kidnapping, torture and sexual abuse. Apparently we're the racists. Apparently we are the racists. And Arood Shah was rewarded in the Labour Party, where she's now the chair of the National Constitution Committee. One of the most powerful committees in the Labour Party, Arood Shah is now the chair of. That is the contempt with which the Labour Party hold the working class communities of Oldham. Even though we vote her out, they promote her. And not only did they promote her, what they've now done is fixed it so she is a candidate in St Mary's Ward in the forthcoming election. In most areas, the Labour Party have branches, and those branches, the branch members get to select their candidates. Not in St Mary's. The candidates have been imposed by head office. Isn't that right, Jim McMahon? It's also the same in Coldust. Isn't that right, Abdul Jabbar? Where the local members are not allowed to vote. The candidates are selected for them by head office. Tyranny. Arood Shah, you'll also remember, when she last represented St Mary's and she was ousted, you'll recall that Glodick Baths was sold by Oldham Council during Purdah at a knockdown price to an organisation that controlled hundreds of votes, the Ghazali Trust, that Arood Shah had a declared interest with. That, my friends, is what we call electoral fraud. There's no ambiguity. That is called trying to rig an election. And Paul Entwistle, the borough solicitor, should be arrested for that. He should be arrested for that and questioned under caution as to why it was that the council signed off the discount sale of a public asset days before an election to an organisation with declared influence in the community and known links to one of the candidates, Arooj Shah. That is electoral fraud. We get rid of Arooj Shah. Amanda Chaddington becomes the next leader of Oldham Council, a Royton South councillor. A young mother. She's also the first openly gay council leader, as Arooj Shah was the first openly Muslim council leader. I don't care about any of those identity labels, if I'm honest with you. I care whether you're decent or not. And I'm at an age where I found out that whether you're black, white, Muslim, Christian, disabled, abled, gay, straight, whatever, has no bearing as to whether you're a decent human being or not. Amanda Chaddington becomes leader of Oldham Council. The Burnham report comes out. Oldham CSE Assurance Review. She goes on the attack, openly engages with a malicious blogger who'd been attacking all of us, many of us. Forced to apologise for the council's failings. Apparently it wasn't a cover-up. They just failed. Apparently it wasn't a cover-up that SHABIR Daddy AHMED, who had been an Oldham Council employee for 18 years, and had, during that time, he had access to children that he could have groomed and gang raped. Apparently it wasn't a cover-up that the council kept that information from us. Apparently it wasn't a cover-up that when the police found out, they kept that information from the council so SHABIR AHMED could continue. Apparently it's not a cover-up that once he was arrested and charged, that references were provided to him from within Oldham Council. Apparently it wasn't a cover-up that SHABIR AHMED held a trustee role, a senior role of status at the Citizens Advice Bureau, where he sat alongside the establishment of the town. Apparently it wasn't a cover-up that we exposed that SHABIR AHMED was a member of the Labour Party during all of this time. Amanda Chaddington refuses to confirm how many children were groomed and gang raped. That's right, the leader of the council, having forced to apologise, now won't say how many of our town's children were groomed and gang raped. They won't give us a number. Why? Well, I can only think of one reason why you wouldn't give us a number. It's because that number is high. I suspect it's in the hundreds. Not one of these perpetrators have been charged. One of the reports, smuggled out at the time of the investigation, published in the Daily Mirror, by the way, if anyone wants to question me, makes reference to a young child, I think she was 12 years old, who was raped by up to, was it 200 or 300 men. Following the council meeting, public meeting where all of this was shared, where the public were outraged, angry, the Failsworth Independents and the Conservatives joined together and put forward a motion asking for a government inquiry. Amanda Chaddington rewrote that motion and it was approved by the mayor from Failsworth, supported by Paul Bentwistle, Elizabeth Drogan and the chief executive, Harry Caffrell. Paul Bentwistle is a borough solicitor. Elizabeth Drogan is the head of constitutional services. They breached the council's own constitution in rewriting a motion to prevent a vote calling for a government inquiry. And Amanda Chaddington is a young mother herself, remember. The subsequent meeting, because of the breach of the council's own constitution, this motion was brought forward again, and Amanda Chaddington led her council in voting down the motion calling for a public inquiry. This young mother, leader of Oldham Council, I think her daughter's 2 or 3 years old, voted down a motion calling for a public inquiry into the confirmed cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. Why? Explain to me, any one of you, explain to me why any politician who has any sense of civic duty to the children of our town would block a motion asking for the government to come in and draw its resources and its skills and expertise and identify all of those who failed our children and hold them to account, support those children, and direct all the resources, whatever means necessary, to arrest and prosecute every one of those scumbags that drugged, raped and sold our children. Why would a Labour Party politician, any politician, never mind a mother, block that vote? No, Nat. The council would not pay for the public inquiry. And even if there was a cost, and indeed, the Labour Party council, you reminded me, Clint Piffian, Royton North Labour Party councillor, stood up and claimed, brazenly stated, that it would be a waste of money. Seeking justice for our town's children who were groomed and gang raped is a waste of money. That's what he claimed. It is a waste of money. He stood up in the council chamber and had the audacity to claim it is a waste of money. And Amanda Chaddington stood up and claimed, we can't say that it's destroyed their lives in terms of the victims. We can't say that being groomed and gang raped destroyed their lives. Apparently she's spoken to victims herself, although she won't say how many victims. And remember, prior to this report coming out, it was all barefaced lies and there were no victims. I've got a special something for Amanda Chaddington coming up during the week. I don't know about you, Gene. I would shop my own brother if he was involved in anything as horrific as this. And before I would shop him, I would beat the crap out of him and drag him to the police station. So forget the political career. But as I've gone on this journey over the last 4 or 5 years, I've found that I am nothing at all like these politicians and policy officers that run this town. And I have made the mistake of thinking that there were decent politicians and decent policy officers because I've spent my professional career working, being fortunate enough to have worked with decent people who hold positions, political positions of power, and senior public facing roles in the civil service. I'm fortunate because I know this isn't how it's meant to be. This is not how it's meant to be. Which is where we go to what I refer to the fourth strand of our public enemy. Enemies of the people. The opposition councillors. We have the main opposition throughout this period has been the Liberal Democrats, led by Howard Sykes, Councillor Howard Sykes. Councillor Howard Sykes, the Lib Dem leader of Oldham, is a declared friend of the notorious child abuser Cyril Smith. They were drinking buddies together. You can make a mistake once. Howard Sykes is also a declared friend of the former Shaw councillor Rod Blythe, Lib Dems. Rod Blythe was convicted of child sex exploitation offences. His conviction was hidden from the public. The council hid it, Howard Sykes and his Liberal Democrat politicians hid it, the police hid it, and the newspapers hid it. They all worked together to keep secret Rod Blythe's convictions. The council refused to answer a Freedom of Information request of which schools and youth clubs Rod Blythe had access to where he could access children. Would you not want to know if a convicted child sex offender politician, through his political role of power of influence, because that's what is a clear tactic used by child sex offenders, is to use their influence to access children, would you not have wanted the council to investigate and confirm, we have looked at where Rod Blythe had access to children, we have investigated and it's okay? They won't. They won't even tell the people of this town where Rod Blythe had access to children. Again, I can only draw my own conclusions from that. And they are that children were groomed and gang raped and sold, sexually exploited. I don't know. All of those things, more or less worse. Why won't they confirm where Rod Blythe had access to children? And why won't any of the councillors stand up in the council chamber and demand to know? Why won't any of the opposition councillors stand up and say, we deserve to know, we have a right to know where Rod Blythe had access to children? Sam Al-Hamdani, Mark Kenyon, Gloucesters, all Lib Dems, all silent. Why won't they stand up and say this needs dealing with? This cover-up is outrageous. They won't. And we move on to the Conservatives. We move on to the Conservatives. Many of us risked our lives forcing this inquiry. We did. I risked my life. I know I risked my life. And pushing from the outside, exposing them every week, spending time in a police cell, being followed by gangsters, attacked. The report makes national news. Oldham, SHABIR AHMED, cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. A council meeting like no other is called. 100 people turn up. Graham Sheldon, the leader of the Conservatives, is missing. He's gone on a holiday in his caravan. He refused to turn up. Bev Sharp, at the time deputy leader of the Conservatives, is also missing. She's gone on a holiday to Mexico. The likes of Max Woodvine, Councillor Woodvine, Luke Lancaster, very little interest because apparently, I've been informed, it's not an issue in Saddleworth. So because it's not an issue in Saddleworth, it doesn't matter. Robert Barnes shows some courage, only for at a later date to backtrack and apologise to the council for showing some courage. Lewis Quigg claims the Conservatives, the Oldham Conservatives, have written to the government. When asked to prove evidence of the letter they've written, they've refused. There was no letter, was there? They just took you all for fools. They took you all for fools. So the opposition is complicit. The only courage anywhere shown in amongst the opposition has come from the Failsworth independents. And they've been called far right and racist and criminals and targeted relentlessly. Their family members have been targeted. The family members of politicians targeted by a malicious blogger, encouraged by the MP. Let that sink in. The family members of politicians. At any point, have I ever gone after Jim McMahon's wife or his children? Have I gone after Amanda Chaddington's daughter? Have I gone after Arood Shah's mother? No. Yet these politicians openly support a malicious blogger who's gone after the family members of democratically elected politicians in our town. Indeed, Marlene. Beth Sharp wouldn't show the letter because there wasn't one. Indeed, Robert. That makes them liars. That makes them liars. So enemies to the people, number 4, is the opposition. Enemies to the people, number 5, is the senior leadership, the council officers in our town. And I'll name them and I'll explain why. Harry Caffrell, the new chief executive, who superseded Dr. Carolyn Wilkins, the previous chief executive. One and the same, both complicit. Dr. Carolyn Wilkins and her entire senior leadership team ran away, resigned and ran away before the report came out. Harry Caffrell was appointed in a dodgy way, on a temporary basis, thereby limiting the field. My information, he was the only candidate interviewed. He was a fix. And then after he got in, his contract was extended by a number of years, signed off not just by Arood Shah, who brought him in, hoping that he'd keep her elected. His extension was supported by both Graham Sheldon and Howard Sykes, who also signed off. Now, in what type of professional sector would you bring someone in on a temporary contract, thereby limiting the field, and then extend his contract within months for several years more? It's a dodgy backdoor appointment. And remember, Harry Caffrell was paid off in Blackburn. They paid to get rid of him. They didn't want him. The council paid to get rid of him. Matter of public record. He is aided by the borough solicitor, Paul Bentwhistle. I call him Bentwhistle. It's a play on words. Entwistle is his surname, but I've been calling him Paul Bentwhistle for a while. Actively involved in the cover-up. Elizabeth Drogan, Director of Constitutional Service. I'll get to her in a moment. Senior council officers. Bloke in charge of Children's Services, Gerard Jones, who Burnham's own report identified as complicit in preventing victims from giving testimony to the assurance review. Victims of CSE in Oldham were actively prevented by senior Oldham council officers from giving testimony. It's a matter of public record. And what all of these people did was, following the outrage to what had happened, and members of the public taking an interest in council meetings and attending council meetings. Remember, they'd already put up these barricades reminiscent of a Belfast courtroom. Harry Caffrell, Paul Bentwhistle, Elizabeth Drogan in her role as Director of Constitutional Services, all complicit in issuing fake ASBI letters with the police logo on, that the police have since backtracked and said it had nothing to do with them, criminalising a dozen or so members of the public and making it almost impossible for anyone else to attend council meetings. It's easier, as Councillor Mark Wilkinson stated, to get into a prison than it is in Oldham to get into a council meeting. Democracy has died in this town, and those responsible aren't just our politicians, it's our public officials. Harry Caffrell, the Chief Executive, Paul Entwistle, the Borough Solicitor, and Elizabeth Drogan, the Director of Constitutional Services, who all sit at the top table, all three of them are responsible. To the Conservatives nationally, Jane, the grooming gangs is an issue that they're happy to grandstand over, but unwilling to take action on. Working class white kids are as irrelevant to the Conservatives as they are for Labour Party politicians to exchange for votes. Rishi Sunak indeed did promise to investigate the grooming gangs and set up a task force. It's not been forthcoming, and he's not mentioned it since becoming Prime Minister. Our children are just a piece on their political board. A pawn at best. We are just pawns at best. And indeed, going into the council meetings, it then transpires that the council have hired a security firm that employs heavies that usually can be found on the doors of nightclubs. A security firm, Capricorn, that have shut down and restarted after not paying the taxman and the VAT man hundreds of thousands of pounds. Yet the council have hired an organisation that doesn't even pay its tax bills and dodges that, Capricorn Security. And again, it's a matter of public record as demonstrated through companies' house records for those who want to claim defamation. What's the guy's name? Billy, who runs Capricorn? Give me a call, Billy. Give me a call. Explain yourself. Explain why your security guards were assaulting members of the public trying to get into council meetings. And these assaults were witnessed. Now, don't expect Greater Manchester Police to do anything, because if the police were going to do anything when the reports were made to the police would have turned up to the council meeting. They didn't turn up to the council meeting. They forced victims to go to the police station, did everything possible for the victim not to issue statements, and then are now claiming there is no evidence. And how can there be no evidence if you've not interviewed witnesses? They're claiming there's insufficient evidence to charge these bullies, these bouncers, yet they've failed to interview witnesses. Nothing new. Nothing new with Greater Manchester Police, who throughout most of this period, you'll remember, have been in accelerated special measures and have been since proven to have protected the Pakistani rape gangs. Proven to have protected Pakistani rape gangs. Worse? No, worse. They've been proven to have been complicit in facilitating the rape of little girls. In a functioning democracy, the police are meant to act without fear or favour. At every juncture in this, the police have covered for corrupt politicians and criminal council officers, or criminal council officers and corrupt politicians. The police have been partners. The Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, instead of arresting the former leader of Oldham Council and questioning under caution over the firebombing of her car, that's what would have happened to me if that video had come out. That's what would have happened to any of you if that video had come out. Instead of questioning her under caution regarding the circumstances of the firebombing of her car, awarded her a medal. I'm not joking. Awarded her a medal. Remember, Greater Manchester Police are responsible for Operation Hexagon. So even though Operation Hexagon, which is the unlawful monitoring of social media accounts of hundreds, if not thousands, of citizens of our town, who've commented on the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town children and the corruption endemic in the civic centre. Greater Manchester Police are responsible, in partnership with Oldham Council, for monitoring what you say via Operation Hexagon. Just let that sink in for a minute. This is the tactics deployed by the Stasi. This is the methods I would expect to find in North Korea or China being applied in Oldham in the 21st century, in 2022, 2023 now. Operation Hexagon is an unlawful police operation in partnership with Oldham Council that seeks to monitor the social media posts of members of the public who object to the cover-up of the gang rape of their town's children and the corruption in the town hall. Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, who also has the Police and Crime Commissioner role, knows all about this and refuses to comment. Why? Why is it that my posts were removed from YouTube and Facebook? Limited my reach after receiving malicious and fabricated complaints that I had been inciting terrorism. Worrying anything I have said so far, have I been inciting terrorism and violence of any form? In fact, where I started was encouraging democratic engagement, and it has been consistently my position from the outset. What should happen is I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not a journalist, I'm not an investigator, I'm not a policeman. Yes, I have a set of skills, but I'm none of those roles. The mainstream media in a functioning democracy should be holding these people to account and exposing them. Instead, in Oldham, the mainstream media, and so we're clear, that's the Oldham Times, the Oldham Chronicle and Manchester Evening News, Reach PLC in the main. The mainstream media, whose journalists are all what I describe as the fake liberal metropolitan elite who live in places like Charlton, Didsbury, Stockport, the Heatons. These people are active partners with Greater Manchester Police, the rape gangs, and the council, and the politicians. The Oldham Times fabricated a story that I had been arrested as part of a child sex exploitation investigation. Erin Lyons, the editor of the Oldham Times, ran with a story that I was essentially a child sex offender. Why? Completely fabricated, completely unsubstantiated. Why? They repeatedly hide corruption and the criminal gangs, the child sex offenders from Oldham, exposed in Keighley, exposed in Bradford, hid them. Why? Until we reported on them, they hid who they were. Why? Hid all of the emails, even that they had them, of JIM McMahon's role. Hid that Debbie Abrams is funded by Pakistan. Hid the video and the suspicious circumstances of the video. Refused to comment. Or the firebombing. Why? Worse, the BBC funded, public funded, that means you pay for her, Charlotte Green, local democracy reporter Charlotte Green, attempt to write a hatchet piece on me. We dealt with her, but that doesn't matter. What she then did was much worse. Charlotte Green was used as a reason to ban Warren Bates, 80-something years old, from council meetings where he was issued with an ASBI, and the council claimed Charlotte Green had been harassed and intimidated by him. Charlotte Green knows this is a lie and completely fabricated, yet refuses to speak out. Why? Why is a local democracy reporter refusing to issue a simple statement saying the allegations made against Warren Bates in reference to me are completely untrue? I did not make them. They are fabricated. If I could clear the name of an innocent man, I would. If I had been used to criminalize someone and I knew it to be a lie, I would speak out. Why is Charlotte Green not speaking out? Why is she continuing to remain silent whilst decent, honest members of our community are harassed, intimidated and targeted? These people are meant to be journalists. The democracy we enjoy, we only do so because journalists have put their lives at risk, exposing the truth and holding tyranny to task. Yet in Oldham, the Oldham Times, the Oldham Chronicle and the Manchester Evening News are complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. If you are finding value in this transmission, sorry, it's 10:30 now. I've got 2 more enemies of the people to go through. I'm just going to go and refill my drink. If you're finding value in this transmission, please like, please share the post. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please consider buying me a coffee. There's a link in there. There are 65 shares so far. I'm very grateful to all 65 of you who have shared. I'm going to go and get myself a drink and come back. Maybe you want to get yourself a drink and come back. But if you are yet to, please press the share button. Please press the like button. And if you're able to, please support the running of these transmissions by buying a coffee or subscribing to the webpage. People who know how I do this will know I tend to do my work in nines. So number 8, enemies to the people, are the organizations, the Muslim organizations that are funded by this corrupt council and who are complicit in the cover-up because they benefit from it. And I will name 2. There are many more than 2, but I will name 2. First one is Oldham Central Mosque. Oldham Central Mosque Management Committee, and I need to differentiate this. When I make reference to Oldham Central Mosque, I don't make reference to the ordinary worshippers that attend. It would be just as inappropriate for me to blame the ordinary congregation in the Church of England or the Catholic Church as somehow responsible for the child abuse that took place in those institutions. So I'm not making reference to the ordinary members of the congregation. It's those who run the mosque. Oldham Central Mosque was funded by a secret loan from the council. The council funding mosques is not lawful. And this loan only came to light after we'd exposed it. And at that point, that loan hadn't been paid back, and there was no paperwork to confirm even when that loan would ever have been paid back. But what we managed to pull out was it was an interest-free loan. No, it was a bribe. It was a bribe for votes. Oldham Central Mosque was accused of harvesting postal votes when JIM McMAHON MP first became MP, when he stood for MP for Oldham Western Royton. Oldham Central Mosque, in its defence at the time, claimed they had nothing to do with politics. Complete lie. And that lie plays out where 2 months ago, the commission that looked into boundary reform for councils published its report, and they'd made some recommendations and suggestions of tweaking boundaries. Oldham Central Mosque, that's right, a mosque, had written to the Boundary Commission objecting to moving one area, the Busk area, out of Coldust into Chaddington. What is a mosque that claimed it was not involved in harvesting postal votes and has no interest in politics? What is a mosque doing submitting evidence or responding to consultation to do with political boundaries? Since when is that the remit of a mosque? Come on, my Muslim friends who watch this, explain to me why a mosque is getting involved in politics. Could it be because the former chairman of Oldham Central Mosque was a Labour Party candidate who was later exposed as a convicted sex offender? Could it be that this convicted sex offender then stood alongside the deputy leader of Oldham Council, Abdul Jabbar, supporting him in his re-election campaign? That's right, the deputy leader of Oldham Council knowingly shared a platform with a convicted sex offender. What is a mosque doing getting involved? We then have the Ghazali Trust. The Ghazali Trust should be investigated for electoral fraud in the way they acquired Cllr Baths. There's no ifs, there's no buts, but instead, one of those fake Metropolitan Elite reporters, Jennifer Williams from the MEN, wrote a piece trying to promote them. Then turns out that one of the main guys at the Ghazali Trust is also involved in a whole host of council contracts and senior positions and that sort of trust stuff. Those are just two organisations. There are many more. Keeping Our Girls Safe, COGS, is another one. Partners in the with the council in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. Partners. Oldham Council are claiming that they're working in partnership with COGS to safeguard children. If I was keeping Our Girls Safe, if I was on its management committee, I would refuse to work with a council that has repeatedly blocked calls for a public inquiry into the cover-up of grooming and gang rape of children. If Keeping Our Girls Safe genuinely cared about girls, keeping girls safe, they would support calls for a public inquiry. Wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? The parish church in Oldham indeed is another one, Gary. And the food bank and the politicisation of all of that, complicit in the corruption in this town. The priest who sits at the top table at the council meeting and the organisation she represents, the church she represents, complicit. So that's number 8. And number 9, as we're on Facebook, enemies of the people. And I'll pick on 2, but there's many more. One is Oldham News and Media, run by a man called Qasim Lenny, an Islamist. He claimed I was a gay Christian convert hoping to have Islamists come and attack me because being gay and a Christian convert in Islam are death sentences. Greater Manchester Police were informed and again refused to arrest him. Then it emerges his links to the Labour Party, including the likes of Arood Shah, the mobster Irish Shimmy, and then everything else falls in place. They promote anti-Semitism, the hatred towards Israel. You'll see it all. And they hide behind, they do it in a clever way, where they hide behind normal stories and they slip those things in. It's a tactic used historically by extremist organisations, and the Oldham News and Media is an extremist organisation. Oldham Neighbourhood Watch is another one. Go and have a look on their Facebook page. You'll see them sharing Oldham Neighbourhood Watch. What is Oldham Neighbourhood Watch? Featuring Ellie from Barrow and her conviction of the perverting of the course of justice. What is Oldham Neighbourhood Watch doing, showing interest in that story in Barrow? Where was Oldham Neighbourhood Watch's interest in the cover-up of gang rape of our town's children? In the Pakistanis that were convicted in Keighley, in the CSE investigations from Oldham, in the Bradford scandal? Nowhere. These pages are run by Pakistanis in the main, Bangladeshis as well, Muslims. Use whichever label suits you. And they are extremist fronts. So there you have 9. 9 enemies of our people. But there is a 10th, and I go back to where I started. We are our own worst enemies. We, the people of our town, are our own worst enemies. They would never have been able to create this compact majority through which they control this town if enough of us got off our arses and voted, and were brave enough to be the change we want to see. It is our fault, all that has taken place in our town and towns like ours. In the end, it comes down to us. It is our fault. We have allowed this to happen. We have surrendered and surrendered and then surrendered some more. We have kept our mouth shut for fear of what may happen to us, or that we might cause slight or offence. We have turned our backs on our children, on our communities, on our history and our heritage, and we are responsible for the mess we are in. I hope you get to watch this transmission if you're joining me late. Thank you to all of you who have shared. 65 of you. I think that says everything. No, 72 now. 72 shares now, so thank you. If you find value in my work, look forward to my updated webpage where I will feature all 9 of these enemies to the people. I am in the process of writing a charter, which I hope to have published. I hope to have it published last week. I haven't been well. I'm still not fully recovered. Hopefully I'll have it next week. Alan, thank you for joining us. I don't think we've met before. Alan Beard. You're not going to find fault with anything I say. I don't think anyone will, of any decency. I think it's very clear to all of you now. I articulate myself clearly. I explain myself. And I present complex issues in a very straightforward and simple way so that ordinary people, such as ourselves, can understand it. Find value in these transmissions. The Recusant 9 platform is entirely community funded. My salary comes from the subscriptions of ordinary members of the public who contribute anything from £1 a month to some even up to 50. I put this out on Facebook. These Sunday night transmissions had stopped, but I thought, bugger that. If you want to attack me and have my transmissions taken down, I'll come back onto Facebook whilst I can. I'm sure they'll try and attack me and ban me on here, but it doesn't matter. We'll find another way. If we go here, we'll find another way, and we'll keep finding another way. But I'll bring them back. I'll bring them back, and as we've seen, they are of value. Because the only way in which we are fighting tyranny, this is the battlefront against Jim McMahon, Debbie Abrahams, Amanda Chaddington, Harry Caffrell, Paul Entwistle, Elizabeth Drogan, Erin Lyons, Charlotte Green, Kasim Lenny, Arud Shah, Abdul Jabbar, all of them. This is where we fight from. Because no one else is doing this. And if this is where I make my stand and I fall, then so be it. These transmissions will return next Sunday. There's a whole host of other transmissions coming forward, by the way, during the week. There's stuff on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, as I promised. And these are in addition to that. Come and attack me. The only thing I'm going to do is swing right back. A very, very good evening to all of you.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.